Right. I'm kind of trigger for bringing just because we have a new mimer. This is something. It's a gift from Hashem to hear something new from our Rebbe. It's unbelievable. Anyways, something I want to touch on that we mentioned yesterday. We started off the mimer by saying that Eretz Yisrael is called, the land of Israel is called the oral Torah, and it's called the footstool. So, and we said the written Torah is called man. So in this discourse, it mentions how Israel is called man because the written Torah is called Israel because the word Israel is Yisrael is an acronym for the words. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. So I didn't mention yesterday that the reason why Yisrael is an acronym for there are 600,000 letters in the Torah is because every Jew has a letter in the Torah. In addition to purchasing a letter in the Torah physically, but every Jew's godly energy flows through one of the letters of the Torah. That's why the word Yisrael is an acronym for the 600,000 letters in the Torah. So another point that I didn't mention yesterday, which I want to touch on, is that the written Torah is called man. It doesn't say in this mimer why the written Torah is called man. There are many explanations for that idea. One explanation is because, as the Zohar says, whatever you see in the Torah is in man. Whatever there isn't, read anything in the Torah at all, you're going to find something of that in yourself, because the Torah, Zesha Torah Adam, whatever is in the Torah is about you and it's for you. Another explanation of why the Torah is compared to a man is because just like a man has both body and soul, so to every concept in Torah exists both on a spiritual plane and also on a physical plane. But there's another reason that the Torah is called man, which I think is more relevant to this discourse, and that is based on a discourse of the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe has a very famous discourse called Vadat Pnei Zaken, you should honor the elderly. The reason it's so famous is because it's a very short discourse, and many people ask the Rebbe for different blessings for memory and other issues. The Rebbe told many people to memorize this discourse. The Punya Korfel who just passed away, he was once in an audience of the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said to him, he's asking the Rebbe about some kind of tikkun, some kind of way of rectifying his neshama. The Rebbe told him to memorize, and he's mentioned to the Rebbe that he's always going up and down spiritually. So the Rebbe said he should memorize this discourse, and then things will go less and less. In other words, will be less and less of the negative to deal with. So anyway, so one of the things that Alter mentions that short discourse, it's a discourse about the power of memorizing the Torah and why it's a mitzvah to know the whole Torah. So it's interesting. Instead of the Rebbe instructing everyone to fulfill what it says in that discourse, memorize the entire Seder of Kachim, the entire order of the Mishnah, it says just memorize the discourse, which is one paragraph. And so in that discourse, Alter Rebbe says, why is it a mitzvah to know the whole Torah? And he explains that every neshama has in it 613 energies that are parallel to the 613 mitzvahs. And therefore, you have to draw down the light of the Torah into yourself by knowing the entire Torah. So the Torah is compared to a man in the sense that the Torah has what's the word they use in science for something that's made of many elements? It starts with a C. Composite. A composite.
Yeah.
Okay. So Torah is a composite and has in it all of the godly energies of that the neshama needs, and that's why it's called a man, because just like a man has many different limbs, and each limb has its own energy, so too the Torah has in it all of the different kinds of godly energy. So the word, a comparison of Torah to a man is emphasizing how the Torah has in it different levels of godly energy. So the land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael, which is compared to the oral Torah, is also compared to a footstool, to a foot, because it is the lowest application of Torah. It's a physical application of Torah. So the Torah is expressing the analogy we learned yesterday was that just like you cannot know why a king builds a palace until he finishes a palace, so too you cannot really know the secrets of the Torah, the inner meaning of the Torah, until you first know the oral Torah. That's why the land of Israel is called the land flowing with milk and honey. You can't have the milk and honey of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah, without having first the land, first knowing the oral Torah. Okay, so in short, though, direction that we're going is that the oral Torah is about the land of Israel. The oral Torah is about application, the physical application of Torah, which is done in the land of Israel. Israel is a place where many mitzvahs can only be done in the land of Israel. So that's why the land of Israel is associated with the oral Torah. The oral Torah is about the physical application of Torah. So there is the way Torah is studied in Gan Eden. Torah is studied and applied in Gan Eden. And then there is the way Torah is applied in the physical world, which is the ultimate expression of Torah. So the land of Israel is called a land which is spacious. It has the vessels to apply the Torah. There's a beautiful teaching of the Sefer HaChinuch in his introduction. He talks about how Hashem gave the Torah to the Jewish people, and he gives the analogy of the world and how there's a whole huge world out there, but not every place in the world is appropriate for you to plant seeds there. It's the big world, but you need to have the right soil to plant seeds. In a similar way, Hashem gave us the Torah because we're the ones where the Torah can take root in. We're the ones that were able to apply the Torah. Then he says within the Torah itself, there are koyanim, and koyanim are able to, Hashem found in the koyanim, the fertile soil for the mitzvah applied in the koyanim. So based on that, Eretz Yisrael is a place where it has wide vessels, wide physical vessels for the godly light of Torah. And therefore, that's a place where Torah can be fully applied. Case in point, this coming year is the year of Shemitah. The year of Shemitah means that you're not allowed to work on the land. Which land? The land of Israel. So this is one of the mitzvahs that applies to the land of Israel, as do many others. And many mitzvahs only apply after Mashiach comes, because then the majority of Jewish people will then live in the land of Israel. But anyway, so the land of Israel is about the physical application of Torah. So that explains something else. That explains why Hashem made a covenant with the Jewish people when they entered the land of Israel. We're going to see soon, Mitzvah Shaman in the Maimer, that the land of Israel is very, very relevant to this time of year period, because the land of Israel in space is where Rosh Hashanah is in time. Eretz Yisrael is the space where God's will is fully realized, where God's deepest desire is fulfilled, the physical world. And similarly, in time, Rosh Hashanah is when Hashem renews the godly energy for creation, renews the godly energy for his ultimate purpose of why he made the entire spiritual cosmos for this world. So when Rosh Hashanah comes, and on the 10th of Nisan, the Jews arrived in Israel, there is this concept of making a covenant. What's the idea of making a covenant? Why then specifically? So the reason we make a covenant on our arrival to Israel is because there's a very big shift in the way that we do things in the desert to the way we do things in the land of Israel. And that shift has both an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage is that you're really fulfilling what Hashem wants you to do in the world. You're really doing physically what Hashem wants, his ultimate desire. What's his ultimate desire, though? His desire is to have a home in the lowest realm. So that desire, that supreme intent of Hashem in creation, that lofty goal, is fraught with a danger. The danger is you're dealing and you're working in the lowest realm. So yes, this is the ultimate objective of creation, but it's something which is naturally fraught with a spiritual danger. And that's why there's a covenant. A covenant in the simple sense is just to promise you're going to keep this, you're going to do this, right? It's a covenant in simple sense. But in Kabbalah, a covenant is also about a connection. It's not just a promise that we're making to Hashem, that we're going to be able to, that we should do Hashem's will when we come to the land of Israel, despite the spiritual danger. The meaning of covenant is a bris means a connection. As the spiritual meaning of a bris is with two people, they make a bond with each other. That's what a bris means, a bond. So what are we bonding in order to facilitate our successful arrival in the land of Israel and our implementation of God's will in creation? What bond is needed? There's a din that you're allowed to swear, Shalom Aleichem. Oh, what's master? You're allowed to make an oath to fulfill a mitzvah. Nowadays we don't do it because we don't do it nowadays because our making vows is always a dangerous thing, because you may not fulfill your vows. The reason why it was once considered an advisable thing to make a vow to do a mitzvah is because when you promise something, that gives you inner energy for it. When you make a vow, you promise, I'm going to do something, that summons your inner energy. That summons something deeper within yourself. You know, I promise I'm going to do this. And say, I promise I'm going to do something, so then you relate to it differently. It's not just because you want to satisfy your conscience and you want to satisfy the person you promised it to. It's also because that act of promising connects you to whatever you promised from a deeper place in yourself is connected to that thing. That's the idea of making it. That's what a promise does. It's not just that you made this promise, it's you made a bond with this thing. That's why before the neshama comes to this world, neshama has to swear to Hashem is going to be at tzaddik. The neshama's oath to Hashem is going to be at tzaddik. That oath is not just a promise. Again, it's the word oath in Hebrew comes from the word satisfy, satiate. By the neshama being in Hashem's presence and saying to Hashem, I'm going to be at tzaddik, I promise you Hashem I'm going to be at tzaddik, that experience itself gives the neshama a new godly energy that animates it and satisfies it and satiates it with the power that it needs to endure whatever challenge it's going to have in this world. So this oath of the neshama is what binds the godly energy that's latent, that's hidden in the neshama, and brings it to the consciousness of the neshama, so that the neshama is able to access it. It says in Chassidus, he uses the term gibor. Gibor is translated as a hero. But gibor really means someone who is mighty. According to Chassidus, what's someone who is mighty? What's the definition of might? Might doesn't mean how many pounds you could bench press. Or the Gemara, the Mishnah says might means conquering Yetzer Hara. What Chassidus translates might is someone, a chalash yimer gibar. The weak person says, I am mighty. That's the pasuk says about a mighty person. The weak person, the power of the mighty person is that they're able to access their inner strengths. That's the power of a gibor. It's not how much power he has in his hands and in his muscles. Might means the ability to unearth and summon those inner strengths that aren't on the forefront of your body and consciousness, that you don't have on the surface. It's something deeper within yourself. That's a gibor. That's a mighty person. A mighty person is. My son told me about basketball that they say that the real the MVP of the game is the guy who the game's going on and everyone's knocked out, and the MVP is like, let's start now. Like where does it come from? Everyone is. He's also knocked out, but he doesn't listen to I'm knocked out. He listens to, no, we got to do this. It's a different kind of energy. So that's the power of making a bris, making a promise to Hashem. It's what allows you to, so to speak, to be the hero, to bring out your inner strength. That's why we've promised Hashem to be a tzaddik. It's not just about a promise. It's about connecting what we have inside of us to our lives. So we could actually fulfill what the Torah says. There's a famous quote. I don't want to misquote it, but something like this. Rebbe once said there are a lot of Jews which say, "I'm Jewish in my heart," and they're right. They're right that being Jewish in your heart is a good thing, because it says in the Talmud, God desires the heart. The heart is the loftiest part of the person. The highest part of the person, deepest part of the person is the heart. But they're wrong. Why are they wrong? Because Hashem doesn't just only want the heart. Hashem also wants us to do, to fulfill what we have in heart, to bring it out. So there are Jews who say to Hashem, Hashem, I am yours every year, no matter what happens on those 3 days of the year, Shoshana Yom Kippur, I'll be there in Shul. And they mean it, and they're right, because those are the holiest days of the year. Those are the closest, most intimate times we have with Hashem. But they're also not right, because Hashem doesn't only want those times. Hashem wants more. So there are other Jews. Other Jews say to Hashem, Hashem, I'm close to you on Shabbos and Yom Tov. And they're right, those are holier times, but they're also not right, because Hashem doesn't just want Shabbos and Yom Tov. And there are other Jews. These other Jews, they say that, what? I'm close to Hashem every single day when I'm studying and when I'm learning Torah. That's my times with Hashem. But then I go out to travel to Glendale on business or working, Las Vegas, Chile, whatever I'm doing. So then it's not the same thing. Not the same thing. So they're also right. Davening and learning is a special time of intimacy with Hashem. Hashem doesn't just want that. Hashem wants us to be close with Him all the time. So the Rebbe said that the reason why all of these people have these issues and they misinterpret the relationship with Hashem, they all emanate from each other. The guy who says, I'm Jewish in my heart, he derives his mistake from the guy above him spiritually. I'm not sure if the Rebbe is actually referring to they learn from them, like just actually see that what's going on, and that makes them make that mistake, or the Rebbe is talking about some kind of spiritual ripple effect. Either way, but the reason why there are people out there that say that they're Jewish in their heart is because there are other Jews who say I'm Jewish 2 times a year. The reason why there are Jews who say that I'm Jewish 2 times a year is because there are Jews who say that I'm Jewish on Shabbos and Yom Tov, and the reason why there are Jews who say I'm Jewish on Shabbos and Yom Tov is because there are other Jews who say I'm only Jewish when I learn Torah. The reason why there are Jews who say I'm only Jewish when I learn Torah is because of this. There are some Jews that say that when I study the deeper parts of Torah, like Chassidus, then I'm connected to Hashem. But when I study the revealed parts of Torah, it's not so holy, it's not so special, not so important. That's where the domino effect starts. That's where the whole thing ripples down. So, getting to our back to our covenant that we made with Hashem, we went to the land of Israel. What is our covenant with Hashem? We made a covenant that we should connect our perception of Hashem's truth, that our deepest part of our neshama knows, that should be something that's in the forefront of our consciousness. It shouldn't remain something that we know on a deeper level on holy special days. Rather, our deep vision, a deep perception of Hashem's truth should be something that we experience. That's a covenant. We made a bond between Yechudi Ilah and Yechudi Tata. We made a bond between the way things are, the real truth, the way Hashem sees things, and we know that to be true in some place, and our neshama knows that as well. There are 5 levels of the neshama. The level of neshama of the neshama, the 3rd level of the neshama, is the ability to be able to appreciate this truth that there's nothing besides Hashem. That's the intellectual appreciation that the neshama has. That there's nothing besides Hashem. Intellect, as Rabbi Elkain used to say, intellect is like a window. Intellect is a window that lets you see things. So our neshama, or more accurately, the neshama part of our neshama knows this truth. Our bris, our promise to Hashem is that even though we're going to go into the land of Israel, but then they deal with all these different kinds of vessels, different kinds of challenges that only exist because of the new place that we're going to. We're going to promise Hashem, we're going to connect our deepest appreciation of Hashem's truth with our natural habitat, with a natural way of looking at things. Let me give you an example of what this might mean. There was a chassid in Lubavitch. His name was Reb Shilem. Reb Shilem was the mashpia in Lubavitch. He wasn't just the mashpia, he was also a chayzer. He was also like Rabbi Yoel Khan. He was one who was entrusted with memorizing the Morim of the Rebbe Rashab and repeating them for everyone. So when it came time for Reb Shilem to get married, so in Lubavitch, when a boy would go out on a date, he would put on a suit. Did I say a suit? He would put on the suit. There was one suit. Everyone would put on the suit when they go on a date. The dates weren't, they didn't go out to Shiloh's or anything. They would go to the girl's house, have one visit. And that's how the dates, that's how you decide if you're going to get married. One visit. I don't know if there's two. I don't know how it worked exactly. I'm sure there was one visit. Okay. I'm not sure if there was more. Probably not. I think my great-grandfather, he made one visit to his betrothed. Interesting, like, he was an interesting character, my grandfather. The girl didn't say anything. So he's like,
yes.
No, he said, I'm not interested. And so she's like, why? Oh, you talk. Anyway, so that was his pickup line. Either way, so Reb Shilem, he when he went to go out, he was someone that died young because of his tremendous exertion serving Hashem. He would eat the bare minimum he needed to eat, and he actually passed away younger because of this. And the Rebbe Rashab said about him, this is someone who exerted every fiber of his being to serve Hashem. So I'm trying to highlight something else, trying to contrast this with something else. But the Rebbe Rashab, I mean, obviously you're not supposed to do that, right? Not supposed to declare ourselves, but this is the point. The point is that when he went out on Shidduchim and he tried to adorn himself as much as he could, I guess, with wearing a new suit and maybe I don't know what else he did. Rebbe Rashab had nachas. He had nachas because this Reb Shilem, who was he was a scuba diver of the spiritual realms. He knew this is the mission Hashem has given him to. He has to not go out on a date. He did what Hashem wanted him to do over here in the physical realm. He didn't think about but he transferred it over. He transferred it over. It wasn't like he went on the date. So he did what he had to do. He adorned himself with whatever he thought he was supposed to do to look more handsome on his date. At the same time, he wasn't separating from his other realm. It was as Rebbe Rashab once said, he saw once some boys walking in the street, and he said he told his son he wants to see how they walk. Why? He says, although it's katnus, although it's a small thing, but he said in katnus you could see godless. In small things you could see great things. So this idea of connecting the higher level of unity, the lower level of unity, it makes me think of David Raskin. David Raskin, he used to say that in New York, there are a lot of skyscrapers, right? So the previous Rebbe once said about one of his chassidim, I think it was Richard the Masvid, he walks among the skyscrapers and he never even looked up. Never even looked up. So like he didn't care. A normal person who walks around skyscrapers for the first time in their life, that's where they're looking. Richard the Masvid didn't look up. But Reb David, I don't know if this is another version of the same story or a different person. The Frierdiker said about either another chassid or the same chassid. He said he walks among the skyscrapers and yet he's thinking about the higher level of unity. He's thinking about Yichud Ilah. Okay, David asked did it take a step further. He wasn't just thinking about the high level of unity. When you know what David Ask used to tell us? David Ask used to tell us like this. Do you know what guy made skyscrapers? If you know, right? Yeah. Who else would know? It's not David Ask. He tells us why the reason why God made skyscrapers is because on Fridays we go out to the Mitzvah, we put on film with people. You know how hard it would be if everyone would be all over the world. People are spread out all over the place. It's hard to meet each other. Here, God put them all together in one building. So you could go to the whole skyscraper and put in front of everybody in the same building.
And even take an elevator too.
Exactly. Actually, my route was in the Empire State Building. So, but really, one floor was either way. Point is that's the deal. He has his perspective, the truth of Hashem, and then there's so what does this mean? So that's connecting the higher level unity with practical application. You're looking at things, you're not seeing things the way they look on the outside. You're seeing things the way they are on a deeper level. Whereas, I think I shared this story with you last week, but I can't remember what I say where. Rabbi Yamin Kletzker, he was involved in. He was a famous chassid who, when he wrote on his tally sheet, the sum total, he what was the sum total he wrote? Well, the sum total of his businesses is nothing besides Hashem. So this Rabbi Yamin Kletzker, he was once doing business with someone, and the guy was busy. And Kletzker wanted to go think about chassidus. And the guy realized that young Kletzker went to scuba dive somewhere in heaven, and he said to him, "Dude, where'd you go, man? Business is business." So young Kletzker responded, and the Friedrich Rebbe said, "If you hear this, if you learn this, is a message for you." That's what Friedrich Rebbe said. It's a very unusual thing. You're reading this story, and he said, "And if you're reading this means you." And Friedrich Rebbe says that young Kletzker responded to him and said, "If when I do business, if when I say Shema Yisrael, thoughts of business can creep into my head. So when I do business, can't I think about Shema Yisrael?" That's the meaning of connecting Yechidot to Chudata, that the higher truths that you know in Chassidus, it's nothing besides Hashem, etc., that you connect it and that you realize that it's not just about some other zone. This is for Farbrengens, this is for other places, but you connect and say, this is about where I am. And they needed to make this bris when they went to enter the land of Israel, because the land of Israel is a place where they had to physically work in the land, be involved in the land, and be involved in the physical world. And therefore, they had to make this covenant. Let's read the end of the paragraph, page 5. And this explains why the land of Israel is associated with the oral Torah. This is a connection that the land of Israel has to the oral Torah specifically. The key since the oral Torah is where God's desire is expressed about physical things in this world. And the Zohar calls this world the world of separation. We say in our morning blessings, you've given me my soul, you've created it, you've formed it, you blew it within me. This passage in our prayers originates from a pasuk. The pasuk says, Hashem says, "For my glory, I have created, I have formed, and I have even made." Even af indicates a separation. There's higher worlds and the lower worlds, but then there's a whole different thing, a world of separation, this world. But mitzvahs are about the separate world, the world that feels like it's separate. So the oral Torah tells us, how do you actually put on those tefillin? Using the actual animal hide. Because it's a whole different thing, therefore it needs to be a whole new promise and a strong connection. You should not fall. By Fight 11 from Australia, he told me that he is a genius. He knows. He wrote a 3 volumes on all the halacha responsa of modern day questions in halacha. And he said when he got married, he discovered something he never knew in the Torah. What did he discover? He discovered, it says in the Torah, that in the Talmud, the Code of Jewish Law, it says the word oif, which means chicken. He only actually means a chicken. When it says pot, it means an actual pot. Like he had in his own kitchen. So he discovered that chicken means chicken and pot means pot. He didn't know that before. It was a whole new application of Torah. So that's why there has to be a new covenant in the land of Israel, because they have to connect the lower level of unity with the higher level of unity. To connect the higher level of unity, which is revealed in the written Torah, and to bring it down to the lower level of unity in the oral Torah. There is a higher level of unity that's revealed in the written Torah. And the promise that we gave Hashem when we went to the land of Israel is that we're going to connect this to physically applying this land of Israel. And that's also the idea of the oral Torah, which is parallel to the land of Israel. It's about bringing the truth of Hashem that we learn about in the written Torah, that's revealed in the written Torah, and to bring it down to the oral Torah, to bring it down to our lives and apply it.
But in that sense, the oral Torah is like the kli that you said yesterday, that the kli is more important than the light.
Yeah.
Right? So the oral Torah in that sense is like something that contains the pnimiut.
Yes.
But it's very hard to get this kli nowadays, because the light is so much,
The 2 souls, they met midway, One was leaving the world, was coming to the world. One was coming to the world. Yes, the soul leaving the world. Says, what's going on downstairs? I heard the soul going down. Says, I heard you could buy a pair of tzitzis for $40. Is it true? Get tzitzis or this for $40? He says, yep, $40. Get a pair of tzitzis. He says, why in the world would you want to leave this world? It's so great. You can wear tzitzis. He says, what do you see what we have to do to get those $40? Till you get the $40, your soul leaves your body. So yeah, there's a challenge of application of the Torah and the vessel and bringing it down. But that's the Hashem's goal in creation. That's the whole point. That's the whole point.